Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Britney Harker, and I am a bookseller and events coordinator at Rediscovered Books in Boise, Idaho. I was on the Indies Introduced Next panel, and I'm really excited to be talking with debut author Lily Kim Qian. Lily is a Chinese-Canadian artist based in New York. She graduated with a BFA in illustration from Parsons The New School of Design in 2021. Along with her illustration practice, she works as a junior designer at Penguin Young Readers. In her spare time, Lily enjoys volunteering at animal shelters and hanging out with her very own cat assistant, Edgar. Until We Meet Again is her debut graphic novel. Until We Meet Again was a favorite amongst many of us on the panel. Its gorgeous illustrations had so much to say all on their own, which added even more depth to the story overall. It deals with heavy topics of mental illness, belonging, and acceptance, but it does it with such compassion and hope. There are parts of the story that are still sitting with me. This book will be such a good fit for those teens that are touched by mental illness in some way, for teens who have experienced moving around a lot, and for teens who are looking to read for an emotional ride. I am so excited to be talking with you today, Lily. Thank you for being able to join us.
Thank you so much for having me here, Brittany.
A lot of courage to share one's writing, but it takes a special kind of courage to share one's life story. How did this creative project come about?
This project has been with me for a very long time. It actually originated as my thesis project back when I was still in undergrad at Parsons. And I did a lot of personal work exploring memory and childhood. And a lot of my professors really encouraged me to explore more themes about my childhood and come up with interesting compositions when it came to memory or interpreting memory. So naturally, I began like sketching more and brainstorming more about my childhood. And so for my thesis, I was thinking, oh, maybe like I've always been interested in graphic narratives and graphic novels. Maybe I should come up with like a graphic novel idea or like just like a short narrative thing about some childhood memories I had or unresolved childhood memories. So I came up with maybe about 10 pages, which are basically included in the first chapter. The the whole story about like me cutting my upper lip with a razor and my mom taking me to, well, I guess in Canada we have like Shoppers Drug Mart, but I guess it's like a CVS, doctor. And
Mhm.
the doctor being like, oh, well, like she just has a cut on her upper lip. It's like really nothing. And my dad also being like, why did you bring her there? Like, she's fine. But my mom
Mhm.
being so anxious about it as kind of like a subtle precursor to realizing that your parents can get scared. And for me personally, that my mom had like some deeper seated mental health issues. And my professors really liked it, and they were like, you should pitch this as a graphic novel. I was like, okay, not a bad idea. Like, gives me something to do. And my senior year, it also happened to be the pandemic, so I had a lot of time on my hands, especially to explore this like digital paneling. Because originally I wanted my thesis to be like a risograph printed thing, like a physical, like tiny book that, or like a zine, but
Mhm.
all like the studios were closed and we were at home. So it was just like, okay, I'll just come up with like a graphic novel pitch as my thesis. And then I was extremely lucky to have my literary agent, Nicholas Gravel, on one of our panels during um, my senior thesis seminars. And my professor, I think Jordan Izip and Nora Krug. Nora Krug might be familiar to you guys because she wrote Belonging and On Tyranny, which Belonging is also a graphic memoir, and On Tyranny is an illustrated version of political work. But they're all like super encouraging and they're like, pitch it to him. Like he specializes in graphic novels. And I was like, okay, sure, might as well. Like I got nothing to lose. And Nicholas turned out to be really supportive as well. And he was like, let's sign you on. Let's get this pitched. So that's how it happened. And it was originally titled pareidolia, which is a word that describes seeing random patterns in things that don't necessarily have patterns and adding meaning onto them. Like for example, like you look at a cloud and you think, oh, it looks like a rabbit, but at the end of the day, it's like a cloud. Um, and I chose that name because I feel like a lot of memories are like that when we look back at them and we put certain meanings onto them based on how we feel in the present and how those memories have shaped us, and also pertaining to mental health issues because a lot of it, especially my mother, had a lot of paranoia and a lot of confused thinking. So it was originally called that, but then they were like, since we're going to pitch this to like the young adult market, it doesn't really like stick. Like it's hard to search up. Most people don't know the words. So I changed the title to Until We Meet Again, which definitely has a better ring to it, I think. And it's just a general sentiment I feel towards the people I've encountered in my life.
Wow, thank you for sharing all of that. It sounds like almost a serendipitous journey there, and it's so cool to hear about all the support you had
Yeah,
as a student.
I was extremely lucky to have all that support as well. So my heart goes out
Yeah.
to everyone who has been with me on this journey.
That's amazing. Well, the art, since we're speaking so much about art, the art you've created for your memoir is just gorgeous. It's stunning. And we all thought similarly when we talked about your book on the panel. And I've even had coworkers read it too, and they were just blown away. Um, what I like about it, which I think good art has, is like if you look at it long enough and you really study it, there it just adds so much more depth. Like your pictures alone are just they say something. I mean, it goes with your wording, but they also have their own life to them and their own like extra layer, and it's just it's amazing. So you are so talented.
Oh my God,
But
thank you.
one page that really stood out to me was 192 when there's that illustration of you as a young girl whispering to an older Lily all the way through. And you talk about how that game is called telephone or Chinese whispers. Um, and the way you illustrated the idea of messages just becoming misconstrued and tangled over time is such a powerful way to think about what it means to grow up, to find yourself, to straighten out the mess that you've inherited or you've been surrounded by. How did you think of that idea to illustrate it with the telephone game?
That's a really good question. I'm also trying to think back to how I came up with that idea.
Yeah.
But I always like the imagery of string, whether it's
Mhm.
like a string of fate or like a string of thought. And the imagery of a lot of the string getting tangled is like repeated throughout the book, especially when a character feels like psychologically confused or um, just turbulent in their emotions. And a lot of times I feel that imagery within my gut when I am having a tough time. It just feels like your gut's twisting and like folding in on yourself. Same with like your thoughts when you get stuck in a spiral, you just, you know, for me, I like think something over, turn it around, misconstrue it, like rethink again, and then the whole process just makes me feel like I'm like turned inside out and just knotted up. So, and it's also kind of cathartic to draw as well because you're just like frustrated. You just want to scribble everything.
Mhm.
So, because I was like, I originally had that kind of scribble image, I was like, okay, let's think about things with strings. Like, strings can be cut, strings can be tangled, can be tied in knots. And then I was like, oh, I used to play telephone as a kid where you like, you know, most people know it. You have the paper cups, you have the string attached to it, and you talk to each other. You try like different arrangements to do it. And I thought, oh, that would be like an interesting image. And I like the visual of the telephone line where there's like a message being conveyed through this string. But of course, like the way the game works is you want to see something get turned into something else and see where like what went wrong around the way, like where did this message get misconstrued. And I thought it was just fitting for, like you said, memory. And um I think we've all experienced like, you know, as you grow up you remember something one way and then you go reach out to your parents and it's just like, didn't that happen? They're like, what are you talking about? I did not see it that way at all, like you're being so dramatic. Or so um,
Hmm.
yeah, so I think part of it just kind of worked out serendipitously that way.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, that use of string, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think that metaphor in general, and you talk about it with memory, but I think it's accessible in a lot of different ways, especially for a teen audience. I feel like when you're growing up, you add some more twists and turns for sure in that string.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think especially when you're growing up and you're sorting out your feelings and thoughts and trying to figure out who you are, um,
mhm,
you can definitely twist it up in some ways. Of course, it's hard to
mhm,
realize at the moment as you're doing it, but I feel like especially in retrospective, you go like, oh, like I really made this complicated myself, like for myself.
mhm,
And
mhm,
you would start to see how you twisted yourself in that shape.
mhm.
So I
Yeah.
hope teen audiences can relate to that.
Hmm. So much of your memoir touches on finding a sense of belonging, like both in community and oneself, because you do talk about how you moved around a lot. Um, and there are a lot of people who can relate to that struggle, especially in our world right now. And you kind of just touched on this, but what do you hope readers see in your story when it comes to finding that sense of belonging?
Well, firstly, I hope that the book itself gives readers a sense that they have the ability to belong, or belonging is kind of more of a mindset, rather than where you are in the world. I definitely grew up for a long time feeling so displaced because I never had like a geographical place I could go home. Like even now, like I live in New York. I'm on like visa. Like my parents are in China. Uh, I don't have like a physical house to go back to,
Hmm.
but I think home is where you decide to, stick it out a bit, For me, it's New York and finding friends, finding community amongst work. I think as long as you have the strength in yourself to create a space for yourself and you're lucky enough to have people around you, that can be belonging in its own way. It doesn't have to be perfect. Um, and I've been really, really touched because I've had some early booksellers and readers come up to me and be like, oh, I found this really relatable because I also moved around a lot growing up. And it, like, even though mine is like a hyper specific case of moving around Canada and um, going to China and ending up back in America, like, we all crave to belong. Um, and I think, especially now, as you mentioned, everything's so up in the air, everything's so unstable. Um, a lot of people are physically displaced, or they also, like, for example, like, could be at the risk of being deported or losing their homes. And I just want to not mitigate that, but at least be like, I hope you can belong and feel safe within yourself as well.
Hmm. Well, I can imagine that finding that sense of belonging, because I didn't move around a lot, but finding that sense of belonging in yourself is super important in
Mhm.
that type of lifestyle because you do, as you talked about in your book, have to kind of start over everywhere you go. So to have that like safe space in yourself um, is really powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think just having the strength to create that safe space for yourself and
hmm
is important, especially for
hmm
people and circumstances that are like beyond our control.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just being mindful of everyone is looking to belong. And I think
Yeah.
that's becoming a message that is really getting louder. And so for those of us that are aware of that message, to be the ones that are like, hey, you do belong. You are welcome. Like, just
Yeah.
so important right now.
And it's like we're all looking for a place, so we might as well look for one
hmm
together.
Right. The moments you shared about your mom, especially when it came to her illness and the harm it caused, was spoken about so tenderly. And that in itself I thought was really powerful because the easier choice for people is to choose not to see other people's humanity. What has helped you keep a soft heart?
Um, I think part of it, well, personally at least, is kind of a sense of relatability I've felt towards my mother as I've gotten older. Like, I have been diagnosed with clinical depression. I've had to kind of make it on my own. And seeing that my mom had moments where she was alone and she didn't necessarily have the help she needed really made my heart ache for her because at least for me, I was like, oh, I was able to get mental health pretty early. Like I have a career, I have friends, I have people who reach out to me. Whereas I guess there's like a certain guilt that I felt after coming across these experiences and then realizing my mom didn't necessarily have that help or have that kind of kindness or forgiveness in her life. So as her daughter, I felt like the least I could do is offer her some forgiveness. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a soft heart more than a slightly guilty conscience as a daughter, but I think through seeing her from that lens and maybe from like even a third person perspective, like um, I felt like much more forgiveness towards her.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And I think when we think about that in other situations as well, it's just thinking about where people are coming from,
Hmm.
um, can be really impactful.
And I think my dad really shaped me to think that way as well.
Mm,
Um, he's very much someone who's like, oh, just think from different perspectives, like think outside yourself. Like nothing's always like all about you. You have to consider other people's feelings. And even with my mom, even though he experienced like a lot of difficulty with her too, he was like, she's
hmm
still your mom. So
hmm
still
hmm
owe her that at least. I was quite lucky to have him and for him to instill that perspective on me.
hmm hmm Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I always like to finish up interviews with asking, what is something you want to talk about when it comes to your book? Because I feel like so many interviews are dictated by the person asking the questions. But what is something you would want to share with your readers, or with booksellers or the world about your book?
Well, I guess it's been my baby for a very long time. Um, I've been working on it for probably like the past 5 years, so having it come into this world at last is not really a shock, but it's not really a surprise either. It's just like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, my book's coming out. Um, of course, like as with the book, I look back on it sometimes I'm like, oh, I could have done this better too. But I I guess I should treat it more like a child and welcome into the world with forgiveness and friendly arms. So I hope
Mhm.
booksellers take it that way too. I'm very happy with how the team and I put it together. It's so nice to see it fully printed and in full color because I do know like some advanced copies went out and they were all black and white. Um, but the color in particular is something we all slaved over. And I did like multiple samples because it's on uncoated paper and sometimes that desaturates things. The palette was originally like much more muted, but after seeing it printed out, I'm like, "Ugh, gotta amp up the saturation." So, and it has a very particular color palette. And I just
Mhm.
hope, even if you don't relate to the story, you can still appreciate it as almost an art object in your home.
Well, I think people are going to be super excited about it. I know I haven't seen it in color yet, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Um, yeah, it's going to be one that I definitely go to
Yes,
when I
and
talk to teens
I'm
and
glad there's
adults.
a paperback and hardcover version. Paperback surprisingly has French flaps, which I guess is a first second thing. We don't have French flaps on our paperbacks at Penguin. But I find it very exciting. I did a wraparound illustration, and the hardcover has lovely little end papers. So I'm very excited about that.
Yay. Well, your work is very apparent. I think everyone's going to be really excited about it.
Thank you.
Lily's book comes out on April 21st. So just a few more weeks, and we're super excited about it. Thank you so much, Lily, for talking with me today about your book.
Thank
We're
you.
all
Thank you
looking forward to it.
for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!